No Chris this week, but welcome back to On the Mind. I'm Austin,
I am Duncan.
and we are going to be talking about the implications of the AHCA and its delay in vote. So, for a little background, our local Duncan.
So, today marked the delayed vote, the officially delayed vote in the Senate of the Republican health care bill dubbed the AHCA, or American Health Care Act. Now, this bill was very hard fought in the House of Representatives. In fact, it was delayed once, minutes, in fact, prior to a vote, when Republicans realized they just did not have the vote majority needed to pass it outright. A few weeks later, it was actually passed by a very thin but simple majority. So this bill has already faced an immense amount of pressure, both from the right and the left.
Which is kind of insane that they're still trying to push this through.
Correct.
I have a feeling this is going to lose quite a few House seats for the Republicans.
I have a feeling that is going to be the case, and probably on the conservative side of the spectrum, I would say quite a few voters for the Republicans.
Yeah, you know what? That's not actually probably far off. We'll get to that implication in a little bit. I know you wanted to touch on that. You know what? Let's just talk about it now. It seems like Republicans are embracing federal health care.
Right, and in fact, we were just talking about this before we started recording. The AHCA, the supposedly conservative Republican health care bill that's going through to supplant the Affordable Care Act, is in and of itself about as liberal as Bill Clinton's proposed health care plan back in the 1990s when he was a liberal Democrat governing as president. So, I mean, this represents a massive shift left over those 2.5 decades between where we were then and where we are now in terms of the Republican Party.
It's kind of crazy. We talk about this quite often, but I don't think our generation really understands just how crazy this shift has been. When Obama was campaigning, he was the far-left candidate.
I was going to say, he's the ideal position because, say what you will about Barack Obama, his positions stayed largely static throughout his presidency. Now, maybe what he got done was more conservative than what he had hoped, but his stated positions remained largely the same, except in foreign policy.
That's
that changed
something actually that I wanted to praise him for, is he moderated out.
Right, and he was quite consistent.
But he paved the way for Warren and Sanders to come in with a sledgehammer and move the country left.
Correct, and by the time he exited office, Barack Obama was, by the standards of his party at least, sort of on the center-right of his party compared to the new leadership that had come in the form of Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders,
the heavy hitters.
Keith Ellison, certainly, who appeared on the scene very shortly after his departure.
Not only that, but Hillary Clinton has kind of fallen by the wayside in that party. She isn't the voice that she used to be.
Correct. And, again, that was... You can debate whether this was the primary cause or not, but certainly the fact that she shifted far to the left played both in the minds of more centrist Democrats and more extreme Democrats a part in the perception that she just was not honest about her policies.
It kind of felt true, as a voter, when you see someone flip-flop like that.
Especially over that, if it had been 10 years had gone by, and she'd said one thing 10 years ago and one thing today, okay, people change their minds. You don't change your entire political ideology over the course of 8 months, most of the time.
Most of the time. Not unless you're looking for votes. But, looking back at the implications here, Republicans, their shift to the left is the most shocking, because you usually look at conservatives as fiscally conservative, but now it's just turned into socially conservative.
Right, and even that, I would say socially conservative in name only. Socially conservative as the colloquialism goes, I guess I should say. It's not really conservative to say that government should have broad powers over the social life of United States citizens. That's not a traditionally conservative position.
Fair enough, traditionally, but it seems sad to say that it's going to be the current form if this continues.
Right. Well, it's like I've said so many times since he became the Republican nominee. Donald Trump is the most liberal president across the board, in my opinion, that we've ever had, in terms of his sheer liking for the use of the state to intervene in matters that most people would say the state should not intervene in.
Yeah, we're talking about most people, not even just conservatives here. So, we'll go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the implications of this delay. Just for one, they tried bull rushing this through.
Yeah, and a very similar tactic was tried in the House when the House version went through. For those of you who maybe haven't been keeping up so well with this,
And we can't blame you, because it's just...
we've had trouble, and we're political junkies,
Yeah.
so, there is that. But, for those of you who haven't kept up with this quite as well, this was the bill that was going through effectively in secret. The changes that were being made to the House version of the bill were not released to the general public until a couple of days before the vote was scheduled.
And it was so forced that a member of the party that was trying to pass it decided that he wanted to pass a resolution to make sure that you had to get at least 1 day per 20 pages to read it.
Correct. And I mean, I think that's a piece of legislation I can get behind, frankly, because...
I thought that wasn't a piece of legislation. I thought that was a rule change just within the Senate.
Well, you're right. You're right.
You're the one that explained that one to me.
You're right. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that one.
No, it's okay. And shout out to Senator Paul. We say that quite a bit on this podcast.
Yeah, we love you, Rand. Come and be a guest sometime, man.
God. You're the only person he'd get along with very well. He and Bryce would just have a staring contest. Anyway.
I'd bring beer.
Better be American or he won't drink it. So, speaking of Rand Paul, he's one of 4 senators that didn't say he was going to vote for it that's Republican. Because it was pretty much on party lines except for these 4.
Correct. There are 4 conservative Republican senators who, for slightly different reasons, have decided to oppose the bill. Rand Paul, of course, being one, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee of Utah, and then Ron Johnson, who is the senator from Wisconsin.
Oh, so we're only talking about 3 real senators and 1 Zodiac killer. No, I can't get behind Ted Cruz. It makes me sad that I have to actually agree with him on anything.
You know what? He's got the right position on this one, however he may have arrived at it.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that, actually. Anyway, let's talk about the 3 real senators. Do you know anything about Johnson or Lee's position on this?
These guys are both very traditionally fiscally conservative Republicans. They are both relatively socially conservative as well. They fit a little bit more into the Cruz mold than they do into the Paul mold. Not necessarily completely into either or, but they're more traditionally socially conservative in that regard. So I mean, we're looking at a group of people who are a bit disparate between the 3 more, I guess, modern conservatives, and then Rand Paul, who's more, in the modern parlance, a libertarian than he is a Republican.
Which is to say he's not as much of a theocrat as Ted Cruz.
Is anyone? Including the Pope?
You know what? It's kind of sad that we have to say that, but you're onto something here, Duncan. Anyway.
So with that said, if we...
Wait, one more time. You mentioned before that there was 1 more senator that was usually in this block of 5 that voted.
1 more senator who was kind of a candidate to maybe oppose this was Orrin Hatch, who is one of the Senate's most senior Republican members. He is typically rather fiscally conservative. Now, apparently on this one, especially because he is viewed as a major party leader, he did get behind this bill. Another one that may have opposed it, under perhaps other circumstances, was Senator Lindsey Graham, who is, again, another of this sort of block of traditionally very fiscally conservative senators. But at the moment, as it stands, these are the 4 who have specifically stated that they will not be voting for it.
All right, so let's look at the implications here. This bill is such a train wreck that it can't be supported by true fiscal conservatives.
Right.
It's got an incredibly low approval rating in the public.
Right.
I think 27 was what it peaked at. 27%.
Something like that, yes.
And you just hear about these senators constantly talking about how they get thousands of messages a day opposing this bill and then almost nothing to support it.
Right, and the thing is that you most likely oppose this bill whichever side of the political spectrum you fall on. If you're a conservative, you hate it. If you're a liberal, you hate it. If you're a centrist, you sort of just look at it and say, what am I watching?
And that's a lot of the American public right now. But when you look at it, it's a step back for liberals who have Democrats who see it as a step away from single payer, which is now part of their party platform, might I remind you, Duncan.
Correct.
Giving you another reason to drink at night. But not only that, but for conservatives, it's a concession that federal health care is basically here to stay. Because they could repeal this easily. You were just talking about it.
Right. So, I mean, what I would probably do if I was a Republican senator, and Rand Paul, on the off chance you listen to our podcast, do this, man. What I would probably do is introduce a simple reconciliation bill. 51% needed to pass it. Simple majority, in other words. And make that bill exclusively for the repeal of the individual mandate provision of Obamacare, which basically states that every person must either have health insurance or pay a penalty at tax time that is to be determined based on their income level and a couple of other factors, mostly the year past the passage of the ACA. I think at this point the chronological increments have expired. I think it's reached about as high as it's going to get, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, so it's a simple way to get out of this, really.
Right, because the Affordable Care Act is a piece of legislation that offers people who would not choose to participate in it absolutely nothing. And few enough people would choose to participate in it because of its natural advantages that simply no longer requiring people to participate in it would likely mean its demise.
No kidding. I think that's about all I've got, honestly. This whole bill is just... I don't know, Duncan.
If nothing else, it marks just a gigantic milestone that we can say the Republican Party has moved so far left that it is no longer recognizable to much of its former base.
It almost looks like the Democrat Party of former times, like the 90s.
Right, of the mid-90s during the economic expansions of the mid-1990s. Typically, people are more conservative when economic times are good. That's just sort of how that works. So,
anyway.
Why the Republican Party has decided to hitch its horse to this wagon is perhaps a question for another day, one that deserves an hour-long episode with a complete break and possibly a popcorn intermission.
Maybe we'll do that or one for our drinking episode.
Yeah, oh boy, that could be fun.
Which reminds us, we're coming up on our year anniversary. I mean, we've probably already passed.
I think we're already past because I think my first episode was in June of 2016. We'll have to go back and look at this later.
But what I'm saying is we're going to celebrate it. And we're going to get trashed, and we're going to talk about politics, and it's going to be a good time. It'll probably be awful long, but...
So basically we're going to do what we always do, except we're going to tell you that we're drunk.
And we're probably going to get a little more extreme.
Yes, most likely.
Alright, so just stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you did like the video, Senator Paul, please leave a like. Comment anything you'd like, Senator Paul. Duncan's on standby. That's
right. I'm here to take your call.
And if you want to hear about yourself more, subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Have a great evening, guys.